Thanks, Chris. Good to see you all here. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being interested in the cause. I'm Andy Bath. I'm the General Counsel and Executive Vice President of the Thomas More Society, which is a national not-for-profit public interest law firm that means we represent pro-lifers at no charge to them. And so we're a public charity, and that's why we get the money we need to defend pro-lifers. Now, Chris has asked me to come in and talk about a cheery topic. And there's this obscure new law in New York that you probably haven't heard of. Who's heard of the Reproductive Health Act? Oh, you have heard of it. Does anybody recognize this guy? So he made a promise and delivered on his promise. Let's see what he's brought us. How is this new law going to affect late-term abortion in New York? Well, right now, where we're starting, before the law was passed, there were 4 times as many late-term abortions in New York City as there were homicides. That's going to increase. That disparity is going to increase. Right now, in New York City, there are more black babies aborted than there are born every year. This law is going to tip more of those babies from the born half of the pie into the aborted half of the pie. So this is what's coming our way. Now let's start at the top and work through it so you know what it does. First off, it creates a fundamental right to contraception and sterilization. And you're thinking, Andy, what does that mean? Hold that question. I'm going to show you the second thing it does. The second thing is it creates a fundamental right to abortion. What does it mean in the law to have a fundamental right? Fundamental rights get strict scrutiny. What does that mean? Strict scrutiny is the most stringent standard of judicial review used by courts in the U.S. It is the most difficult legal standard for a law-challenging court to withstand. Here's how it works. U.S. courts apply the standard when either a fundamental right is infringed, like one of the rights in our Bill of Rights, or when a government action applies to a suspect classification such as race. So, for example, a city could say, in this particular area, there's no loitering. And if somebody challenged that law in court, then the judge would look to see whether the city had any rational reason for doing that, and if it did, that the law would pass muster. Now, if the same city said, in this same area, no black people are allowed, that would get strict scrutiny. That law wouldn't stand because it couldn't survive the test. Here's the test. To survive strict scrutiny, the law must advance a compelling governmental interest. And that is an interest of the highest order. For example, courts have said that for governments to survive, they have to have money. So levying taxes is a compelling government interest. Now, they can't do it unfairly, number 2, so it has to be narrowly tailored, and the government must use the least restrictive means to achieve its interests. This is the bottom line. Laws subject to strict scrutiny rarely survive when challenged in court. Now, the next thing it does is it says the state will not discriminate against, deny, or interfere in the regulation or provision of benefits, facilities, services, or information. So that prohibits state action that restricts abortion access, or burdens, or punishes people for getting abortions. This applies to all state officials, all state employees, and all the administrative agencies of the state. So now, another thing that has changed is who can legally perform an abortion. We had a doctors-only rule in New York until this law was passed. Now this law says, here's some legalese for you. It says, a healthcare practitioner licensed, certified, or authorized under Title VIII of the Education Law, acting within his or her lawful scope of practice, may perform an abortion. So what this means, we'll stop there and translate. If you go to Title VIII of the Education Law, you'll learn that now not only doctors can perform abortions, but physician's assistants, nurse practitioners, and licensed midwives. Some of those could. Now back to the law. All right, we continue that sentence. When, according to the practitioner's reasonable and good faith professional judgment, based on the facts of the patient's case. So now there's no standard except the practitioner's own judgment. And then it goes on to say, and the patient is within 24 weeks from the commencement of pregnancy, or there is an absence of fetal viability, or the abortion is necessary to protect the patient's life or health. So let's break this down a little bit. All right, notice first that the RHA places the decision to perform an abortion within the discretion of the practitioner at any point prior to a live birth, allowing them to exercise their professional judgment regarding 3 key considerations. 1, the pregnancy is less than 24 weeks gestation. That means abortion on demand for any reason for the first 24 weeks of pregnancy.
We already had that.
We already had that, including when the baby has a heartbeat, when the baby can feel pain. 2, there is an absence of fetal viability. This leaves decisions like this to the practitioner's reasonable and good faith professional judgment. 3, the abortion is necessary to protect the life or health of the patient. I'll point out in this law, there's only one patient.
Which patient?
Yeah.
Just the mother.
Just the mother.
The child's not a patient. Child's not raised in New York City or New York State.
Okay, until this law was passed, abortions after 24 weeks were permitted by law only if they were medically necessary to protect the mother's life. That changed. Because now it's life or health. But the key to this is that Roe versus Wade's companion case, Doe versus Bolton, defined health as all factors, physical, emotional, psychological, familial, and the woman's age, relevant to the well-being of the patient. So in reality, the RHA permits abortions essentially on demand up to the moment of birth. Now, it went further. Section 4164 of the Public Health Law is repealed. What is that law? That law said that if you're doing a late-term abortion, there had to be another doctor present to take care of the baby born alive during a botched abortion. And that baby had to be given the same care that a baby born outside of a botched abortion context would be given. That was repealed. It also said that a baby born alive during a botched abortion shall be accorded immediate legal protection under the laws of the state of New York. Those protections are gone. Also says the medical records of all life-sustaining efforts must be kept by the attending physician. No longer. Then it said that if the baby died, it couldn't be treated as medical waste. It had to be disposed like a human being. That's gone. 19 states now, New York has joined 18 other states in offering no legal protection for babies born alive during botched abortions. Another thing that went away, there used to be a statute in New York that made it a misdemeanor to sell or distribute contraceptives to a minor under the age of 16. No longer. And the person who sold or distributed the contraceptions to a minor under 16, to someone other than a minor under 16, had to be a licensed pharmacist. No longer. Section 5 repeals all criminal statutes that used to make illegal abortions illegal. So a ripple effect of that is that the coroner or a medical examiner no longer has authority to investigate any abortion because it's no longer a crime. Number 6, Section 6 takes all abortions out of the homicide statute. The RHA completely decriminalizes abortion, moving it from the state's criminal code to the public health code. You know Planned Parenthood say, abortion is health care, or abortion is good health, good care. They bought Planned Parenthood's line and written it into law. There are no longer any abortions that are criminal in the state of New York. And the end result, New York is now an abortion tourism destination state.
Sick.
There are the majority of states in this country regulate or prohibit late-term abortions. People have to go somewhere to get it. Now they'll be coming to New York.
Great.
So that's the great news I have for you. open to taking questions now.
Sherry, Andy, how many of the 19 states have recently gone with none? Have they been around for a long time together? Laws that say you can have a motion up to
Yeah, for the most part, they've been around for a while. New York is the one who has changed recently, and there are bills pending in other states' legislatures that would also move them into that camp, including our home state of Illinois, which has an even worse bill pending in the legislature. Who's next?
I want to say that there are, obviously, this is only happening because the Assembly and the Senate have become under Democratic Party control. Obviously, if it flips back and the Senate goes back under Republican control, there could be some change. And there is one thing that may, bite the hands of the Democrats, is that they're also campaigning to make. Okay, I just wanted to say that, it's not a question but a statement, that this is only possible because the Assembly and Senate are in Democratic Party control, and that's what's putting it through.
And the governor.
And the governor, right. You have a trifecta of evil. And if the Senate were to flip back to Republican control, there could be repeal potentially of this. Is that correct? No?
Well, the Senate
Ain't gonna happen.
split back, and the Assembly absolutely.
Ain't gonna happen
Well,
this
I want to say about repealing.
That's fine.
The Senate, one thing that may cook their goose is that there's a big campaign now among to issue driver's licenses to illegal aliens. And in districts of the Assembly that are a little more shaky, the Democrats don't have real strong control. They are campaigning to try to build support for that among going to their home districts and talking it up. And they may quietly find that that may lead to district flipping. Because they may find quietly, like with the Trump vote, that people just aren't going to have that.
Hopefully.
Is there any hope? Is there any hope?
No, I'm saying that.
But how difficult would it be to switch?
The citizens of New York are supposed to be engaged in self-government, and polls that I've seen say that over 70% of New Yorkers oppose late-term abortion. So the citizens have to take it into their own hands. You were next.
Oh, no, that was going to be my question.
You got your question.
Well, it was a question. Is there any hope of changing it?
Oh, you just took it out of my mouth. What do we do about this? How do we get it done? There's a lot of corruption on both sides of the party. I'm fighting to clean up the Republican Party in Queens myself. How do we get this done? How do we fix it?
Well, I think this is a tough nut to crack. I'll tell you the story of a woman who called me in Illinois. Illinois has a much worse bill than this pending in the legislature. She called me up and she said, and it was introduced with so many co-sponsors that it looked inevitable that it would pass. She called me up and she said, I got my assemblyman to take his name off the bill as a co-sponsor. And I said, tell me, I want to know the recipe. She said, well, I called, first I took out an ad in the church bulletin where he was a parishioner of her parish. And I said, I gave his contact information and asked everybody to call him and tell him to vote against the bill. Then I learned that he was a co-sponsor. I hadn't known that. So I took out another ad the next Sunday in the bulletin and told people to call him and tell him to remove his name as a co-sponsor. Then I started calling his office. And he refused to meet with me, and he refused to talk with me. So I left a message with his staff that if he didn't take his name off the bill as a co-sponsor, by the end of business Friday, I was going to start a petition drive at every mass at church on Sunday. He called me then, and he tried to talk me out of it. He said, really, it's the hard cases, abortion has to be available. And she hammered him. She said, this is not just about abortion. And it would take a lot longer this bill was 20 pages long, maybe the one in Illinois is 119. It goes much farther than this. And she hammered him with all the evil that is packed into that bill and said, if you don't take your name off by the end of business Friday, I'm going to do the petition drive. He called her back within half an hour and said, I agree, and he did take his name off the bill. Now, 5 co-sponsors have removed their name from that bill, and if there is enough blowback, citizens can, the legislators will respond.
Is that Catholic Church?
It was.
You may
Yeah, what I'm asking.
Andy, isn't this, one of the points you made is that this will make this a constitutional right, but isn't it true that amending the New York State Constitution takes almost a three-year process? That there has to be two consecutive different legislatures that vote, and there has to be a statewide referendum, which means if this law is to become a constitutional amendment, that the voters of New York City, a state, are going to get a chance to actually vote this down. Am I right?
You are right. Amending the Constitution is long and difficult. That doesn't mean that it shouldn't be pursued. And there's multiple effects that the people of New York will be having. They might be able to get the legislature to repeal this law. They might be able to get a constitutional amendment. They might be able to create enough blowback so that legislators in other states say, these guys in New York weren't expecting that kind of a reaction, and we're not going to go there.
But I mean, what I mean is that they are trying to create this as abortion as a constitutional right. My point is, they have to put out, to make it a constitutional right, they have to put the amendment to a ballot referendum. So this will not become a constitutional state law unless we vote on it as a people, correct?
This is a statute that's passed by the legislature. That means the next legislature can come in and repeal the statute. Chris is talking about a constitutional amendment, and Governor Cuomo has promised to come back with a constitutional amendment, an even bigger commitment to late-term abortion than this statute. There is a chance that some future legislature would, the other side might take over the legislature and win the governor's mansion. Some future legislature might repeal this statute. If there was a constitutional amendment in place guaranteeing a fundamental right to abortion, then it would be very difficult to reverse that.
Would we be able to vote on it? Would it have to be able to vote on it? Would it have to be put to a vote of the people?
There's a referendum as the last step.
That would be in 2 years, right?
I think that's right.
So is this currently going to be a referendum or just a statute?
This is a statute that was passed by the legislature.
It's not part of the Constitution.
Not yet.
I don't need this, but the New York State used to keep pretty detailed statistics on abortion, and this bill seems to, when I read it, drop that requirement. Item 2 is that previously, because we've searched for these, New York State required a death certificate be filed in your town or with your city and with the State Department of Health if a child was aborted after 20 weeks. What is the effect of this law on those requirements for paperwork and death certificates?
I actually don't know. It wasn't addressed in the statute, and what I did is analyze the statute. So I'm afraid I can't help you with that one.
The second part of that question is that we have a lawyer in Putnam County in northern Westchester. His name is Grace, Michael Grace. Chris knows this guy. He wants to take this as a constitutional case, which is in state court, which I believe is a mistake because our courts are so rotten in the state. But he said this is a discrimination case against a class of human beings, which he believes has constitutional implications, which I believe should be taken to a federal court. He is going to do this. He said Michael Grace is going to take it as a constitutional case before the state courts, which is, I think, a big mistake because of our state courts. What do you think of that?
Well, I wish him the best.
Well, we have to move on because I've got like 3 more speakers in an hour, Andy. So I'm afraid that we have to end it here. But this was a superb analysis. I thank you for it. I thank you for this PowerPoint. could go on with a lot of questions because you've generated more questions than anybody. Thank you, Andy. God bless you.
Andy,